And now it's time for a preview of an upcoming game by Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today I'm taking a look at a preview of a game. This game is called Forces of Evil. Yes, let's fight the forces of evil. Well, actually, no. In this game, you are the forces of evil. You're going to pick some big evil bad guy, maybe a dragon, maybe a lich or something, and you're going to be making a dungeon and have the good guys come in. If you played a game from the 90s called Dungeon Keeper, this game is a very similar idea to that. You're building a dungeon, you're prepping your goblins and undead and different creatures so that when the heroes come in, you lace them before they can steal your hard-earned treasure. And the person who does that the best is the biggest, the baddest force of evil, and they'll win the game. Let's take a quick look at it. Now remember, when I show this game that I'm showing just a prototype of the game. Some of the stuff may be final, but there's a lot of things that can still change. I'm just here to give you kind of an overview of how the game plays. Now what you have here is, up here in this, there's a town. And as the game progresses, there's different guilds in a town. A fighter guild, a mage guild, a priest guild, and a rogue guild. And people will be coming from these guilds into town. And it's even possible that they will show up from other towns, coming from visit to towns. And occasionally, these guys are going to attack your dungeon, you big bad evil overlord, you. And when they attack, you need to be ready to prepare to fight against them. Each person in the game is going to take the evil persona. So you might be this fallen angel, or this otherworldly horror, or this primeval worm, or the unnatural abomination, or the diabolical demon, or the cursed necromancer. And each of these guys has kind of a special ability, but there's actions that you will be able to take if you are the necromancer. Like you can take this animated zombie and take an influence, or conjure a skeleton by paying 2 influences. Those are 2 actions that are unique to the cursed necromancer. Now the necromancer will be like the final room in your dungeon, and you will also start with a dungeon entrance. And the dungeon entrances will tell you what you start with. So for example, if you start with this dungeon entrance, then you will start with 5 zombies. So for now, I'm going to put these 5 zombies here. Now as the game progresses, there's many different units that you can get. There are zombies and skeletons and hobgoblins and ogres. You know, here for example is a hobgoblin, and let's see, here we have a manticore. And some of the things about these, when you look at the different things, the shape that they are is the die that they're going to use in combat. So the triangular shaped ones are going to use a 4-sided die in combat. The square-sided ones will use a 6-sided die in combat. And the ones that are shaped like a diamond will use an 8-sided die in combat. Now there are rules about putting people in rooms together, like undead only stay in rooms with other undead. The hobgoblins, goblins, and ogres, they can all hang out with each other. Creatures like this manticore can only hang out with the same type of creatures, and some creatures are solitaire, like this manticore. When he's in a room, he's by himself. So you get your starting room. One player is chosen to go first, and the game begins. Now the game is going to involve players taking different types of actions. Those actions can be the actions that are on your main character's card, but there's also going to be 4 black cards over here, cards of darkness that are face up, and each of these has an action. Like for example, I could take this savage action, recruit a goblin for free if I didn't have any goblins in the dungeon, or I could recruit a goblin for 1 influence. Speaking of influence, over here, where I have my main bad dude, here, the cursed necromancer, I'm going to start with a certain number of influence. As the game progresses, I'm allowed to have a maximum number of influence above my character. That influence is 2 plus the number of rooms that I have in my dungeon. So one of the actions actually is to spend an influence to take a room. And you can see there's different rooms here. You can take one of the 3 face-up ones or the top one from the deck. Each room has a number at the top which shows fronts. Basically, that's how many people can fight at the same time. And so there's these different cards that you can add to your dungeon as you progress. And the more the bigger dungeon, the more influence you have. This influence will be spent as to have things happen over the course of the game. And in fact, you can even have negative influence. You can take negative influence as the game goes by. We put it underneath to show that you've taken negative influence. once you have negative influence, you can't take more negative influence till you get that influence back. Now, how do you get that back? Well, you get it back by saying you're going to recover influence, and that's when you start turning over cards of light. When you take one of these actions, you'll turn over these cards and be adding them to the thing here, but these cards will often be doing negative things. For example, these charlatans are going to bring a rogue and a mage are going to show up. They're going to come out of the camps and get ready to attack. And sometimes they will attack. Here's a treasure hunt. All the people in the village are going to attack, and any player with no treasure in his dungeon can avoid this attack. So, what are we trying to do over the course of this game, besides build your dungeon and fight off these good guys? At the end of the game, you're going to get points for all the creatures, the good guys that you've killed. Okay? That's like prestige. You killed these guys. Hooray. You're also going to get points for the treasures that you've accumulated. There's different cards that provide treasure and ways to get treasure. You'll also get points for all the influence you have and lose points for all the influence that you might be negative. And whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. The game will end when you've defeated the good guys. Yes, that's going to happen because eventually these camps will all be destroyed or players will have gone through the complete deck of light cards. So, again, on a player's turn, they'll take 2 actions. They have the opportunity also to take a plot action, which is to turn over a card of darkness and put it on top of one of the other ones, which is going to change the possible actions that can occur. And it also could trigger an event. There's events in both cards of darkness and the cards of light. So players are going to continue to do this. They'll continue to take actions, possibly taking plot actions and building their dungeons and adding troops. When the troops come in, you're going to do some combat. I'm not going to go over combat in detail, but as I mentioned, you'll have different dice that you'll be rolling. The number of fronts in a room basically shows how many monsters you can have move up in the front lines and fight the heroes. And the different heroes, as you can see in their cards, have different special abilities. Some can support other heroes from the back line, like the mage has a support where he can do a ranged strike. And you'll go back and forth and hopefully stop and kill the heroes before they get to your final boss dude, where you'll lose influence if they make it that far, and they can also run off with your treasure. There's some other rules in the game, as when you can rearrange your dungeon, the different people in it, and whenever you do that, though, you have to make sure you have enough treasure in your dungeon, because you need treasure to support some of the units. Undead don't care about treasure, but goblins and many of the monsters do. Anyway, at the end of the game, the person with the most points is the winner. There's a lot of different things in this game. You're trying to use, you really have to look at the special abilities of your evil overlord and see how they're different, because they're going to be different than everyone else's. If you're the cursed necromancer like I was showing there, you're definitely going to be somebody who works with undead. The demon can get influence back by killing his own troops. You have to look at the different available actions there, and you have to determine, should I cover one of those up because maybe it helps somebody else out, or just hopefully I can draw one that will help me out and that I can use. And when it's time to get that influence back and you so desperately need that influence back, turning over that white card is like almost a push your luck. Like, oh man, I don't want the bad guys, well, I guess I'm calling them bad guys, but they're actually the good guys. I don't want the good guys to attack me. So there's a lot going on. You have to decide how you're going to build your dungeon. There's some of the cards are attachments that you can, instead of adding a room, this ancient vault attaches to another room and changes the aspects of that room a little bit. So how you build your dungeon, how you populate your dungeon, and what actions you take will determine who is the biggest and baddest of you all. This game's going on in Kickstarter right now, and so if you'd like to support this, you'll see a link for it in a second. Also, you can click below in the description of this YouTube video and go right to the Kickstarter for Forces of Evil. Protect your dungeon.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.